Stop right there. If you are already playing Monster Hunter Wilds or are about to, here's some mistakes you definitely don't want to make early. Now, there's some basic things in Monster Hunter Wilds you want to make sure you set up first. First are a couple settings you 100% want. The first is on the third tab on the second page, your camera zoom distance. You want to make sure this is set to 10. When it's normally set to, I believe it starts to the default as 4. This is typically how close your character is to the camera. And it can actually really hinder you in a lot of fights because when you get up on top of big enemies, it can really block your view. I like to put this at 10 so that way it zooms you out as far as you can go. That way when you're fighting monsters, they're not getting in your way and blocking the entire screen. Next is on the camera settings again on the fourth page. And this is the monster sighting camera. This enables a cinematic camera when you go to fight a monster. Eventually it gets really old. I would definitely go ahead and turn that off because over time it just kind of gets annoying. Under game settings on the third page, I would definitely consider turning off your auto explore for your seek, basically because you can set a waypoint if you want your seek to just 100% go there and not auto explore the map. But sometimes if you get up and walk away while you're still sitting on it, it will literally auto explore and roam around the entire map all by itself, and you'll be mad confused as to where you are. So, and finally, under the control section on page 2, I would definitely come in here and turn melee and ranged weapons on toggle mode or aim and focus control modes. There's typically a lot going on with you having to not only attack and do different combos, select different foods and different pods from your menus is one less step that you have to do, not to mention that focus mode actually helps you if you're on console by clicking the right stick in. You can essentially kind of lock onto the target for a couple of seconds. You keep focus mode on, it's a lot easier to just stay locked onto a target and honestly make fighting monsters that much easier. Now here are some of the smaller earlier vendor mistakes that you honestly might suffer from. So one of the big things is it'll introduce you to the ingredient center. The ingredient center is great because it's basically for free over time. You come and talk to them and eventually he will give you rations. They bring in rations for you basically nonstop and it's free food. So you almost never have to worry about early going out and like hunting food by yourself. Other vendors like the provision stockpile are also great early for a lot of different things, especially things like potions if you struggle with potions early, or things like antidotes, cool drinks and hot drinks. Later on in the game, you're going to need cool and hot drinks. So that way, when you go to different areas, like a very hot area, you'll need to drink a cool drink in order to get relief from that. Otherwise, you take consistent damage and boss fights are just pretty horrible. But again, there's other tools here. There are trap tools, which later in the game you'll need to use to actually trap different monster types. Dung pods, which are extremely useful for breaking up big packs of enemies. If you run into a big pack of enemies in Monster Hunter, you have to do this to separate them. Otherwise, you can't really take on 5 of them at a time. Also, you have the support desk vendor. He's going to give you different access to things like certain completed limited time bounties. As you unlock them, you want to make sure you get these because they can give you some pretty actually big benefits, like these armor spheres and this silver melding ticket, which you can use to upgrade your pieces like armor, which you'll consistently need throughout the game. So essentially you have your base camps for all your different areas in each of the different locales. The pop-up camp guy is really useful because you can put down pop-up camps, and as you begin to level up and finish some of these areas, you unlock more and more pop-up camps for different places. You can see each has a safety level, and monsters can actually destroy your camps naturally. So I wouldn't recommend putting a ton down in here, but when you're going into an area and need some quick camps and teleport points, definitely recommend doing this. And now as far as vendors go, Gemma the Smithy is your top-notch main vendor you'll be at all the time. She allows you to forge different pieces of armor, like upgraded pieces, and then upgrade your already existing pieces. Through the very original playthrough of the campaign, you're going to unlock what we consider low rank gear. You'll get low rank gear until you beat the initial campaign through the 3rd chapter mission. Eventually you'll unlock higher ranked gear, but again, this low ranked gear, as you begin to progress, you'll make better and better gear with different equipment skills that help you depending on what build you're running. I would recommend just upgrading to the highest set of gear every time you get the chance. But even with lower ranked gear, especially if you do happen to struggle a little bit, you can definitely come in here and upgrade this gear using your armor spheres, which we mentioned you can get at one of the other vendors, and just through playing the game, finishing quests, etc. And here you can actually click and assign some of these spheres to level up your armor just to give it much better defense. I would definitely recommend maybe waiting a little bit, but by all means, if you need them, use them. That's what they're there for. And also you can click triangle to go into your sub menu and go into the skill info tab to actually see what some of the abilities and equipment skills do. Certain sets have different equipment skills and different bonus sets. So for instance, this piece of gear has tool specialist. It shortens my recharge time. But if you notice, we have 1 out of 3 for Lord's Favor, and it temporarily increases your attack power when using melody effects, as well as Protective Veil. You can see the set bonus down there for this piece, meaning if I have 2 pieces, I get level 1. If I have 4 pieces, I get level 2, so it makes it more powerful in this case using a full set. Now the same goes for your weapon. Obviously you can come in here and select to create any weapon you want. I'm using the long sword for instance. So you can see in order to get to these higher level sides over here, you actually have to craft all the way over, especially going through the first 3 chapters of the story. You're going to unlock a lot of weapons fairly quickly as you beat monsters. So come in here and upgrade and keep the highest constant weapon that you can find. And again, as you get further into the game, you begin to unlock more of these swords, the higher level ones that we can't quite see yet. And earlier in the game, Gemma will have a recommended tab that you can use, and it'll actually just show you the best recommended gear for you to go ahead and craft if you don't want to put too much thought into it. Now, one other cool thing with gear and all gear basically in general is that you have a wish list. This means you can put pieces of gear on your wish list so it tracks the materials. And then once you get enough, it notifies you to say, hey, you can build your item now. And that way it reminds you so you can actually go and build it. For instance, if we wanted to build one of these swords, we could hit Y to sub menu and then add it to the wish list. So that way it would keep track of those materials and that gear for us. Now, eventually you will unlock mantles and talismans. Essentially, those 2 things just give you bonuses, but you can actually forge and upgrade your own talismans through Gemma as well, meaning you can hunt down specific materials, craft those talismans here for the bonuses in order to also upgrade those. And some of these give you some really insane bonuses. For instance, this one gives the stamina surge skill, and that actually increases our stamina recovery speed up to plus 50%. And one easy final thing is you want to make sure every time you come in here, essentially you look and see if your Palico needs new equipment. It makes them way more powerful immediately, and it costs basically nothing. You can see currently my Palico is using one of the last main campaign pieces that has 11 melee damage. You can see even just going up 1 and then 2, my Palico could be doing so much more damage. Now again, if we go to the high rank section, you can see I can still build stuff here. So you want to make sure you're just fully upgrading your Palico's gear all across the board each time. Next is your crafting list, and this is your friend, and you need to just set it up early so that way you can be set up for easy success. So to give you an example, if we go into our menu here and we actually go into our crafting list, this is going to give us a bunch of different options. Now, this can be a little daunting at first, but essentially these are just pre-made options that are set up so that way they can auto create things for you. For instance, since Mega Potion is turned on, if we get a potion and honey, it will create a Mega Potion automatically for us without us even having to do anything. And it makes life so much easier. For instance, Cool Drink, I believe, starts on, meaning if you get a chill shroom, this will automatically turn it into a cool drink for you, which is stuff you'll need to use throughout playing. The same goes for things like pods. You can turn those on if you're using specific pod types, or even when capturing creatures, things like turning on shock trap, pitfall trap, trank bombs. There's a lot of useful things that you can craft, and you want to make sure whether it's ammo, well, no matter what it is, if you're using that consistently, turn it on in here so when you get the materials, you don't have to go create it, craft it. It's a waste of time to not do this. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the tent. Now, one of the big things here is customizing your Radial menu. And this is something that, even though it's simple, for new players especially, you should go ahead and do this because it confused the heck out of me when I started playing. And this is because I didn't know where to go when I started wanting to use certain items. I had no idea. Essentially, you can customize your Radial menu, and you need to put all of the things you're going to use on a typical daily basis in here. So for instance, I have specific health pots. I have my optimal health pots. I put rations in here, an antidote, energy drink, and nullberries to kind of nullify some of the effects I'll get on me. Hot and cool drinks because you need those constantly when going into areas that are too hot or too cold. And basically, you can set up a bunch of menus like that. For instance, you can set up ammo menus with better ammo that you'll actually be using, and additional tools or get rid of tools that you may not need in the moment just to make it a little cleaner. This way, when I'm running around exploring, when I pop up my menu, I can instantly choose between my whetstone, my SOS flare, my rations, my health pots, every single thing on one immediate wheel. It makes it so much easier just in general to play. Now, if you build out equipment and you want to go back and change to your old equipment, you can actually do that at the smithy. I believe you need to come in here and change your equipment in here. And another good thing about that is you can come in here and obviously change your weapons to whatever ones you previously crafted or any new ones. And also you can actually click right because as you level up and get better weapons, different weapons and pieces of armor will actually have open slots for additional jewels, and you'll get jewels just through playing, beating monsters and bosses, etc. But as you get these, you should immediately come in here and fill it with some sort of jewel that you have. Whatever it is, put something in here to help you because you can immediately come back in and change it out for anything you want later on. And having way better extra resistances Something like that always helps, so make sure you're paying attention to that when you upgrade or get new gear. Also, you can come into the end menu and change your appearance or your equipment appearance. The one thing that confused me about this is if you'll notice your equipment appearance, currently you cannot change the pigment colors. This means you can't create the armor that you want, and there's only one way around that. So if you actually look, we turn off the display model for all this. Don't judge my character, we'll have a problem. That's going to turn off the actual look of the armor itself. Or you can actually click on the helmet itself and use, for instance, the Guild Knight set that I believe you get from a pre-order bonus that will change this. This is the only way you can change the color of the first initial run through up to chapter 3 of the game. Otherwise, you have to stick with the base armor set. If you see, we select this Guild Knight feather hat, we can now change the color. The only way to actually change the color is actually unlock the high rank gear. Once you unlock that gear, you can see this chainmail armor. We actually have some crafted. High rank gear will officially start showing up as options to actually transmog your regular pieces of gear. So again, the basic gear, you can't really do anything about it, but once you get that higher rank gear, you can finally start to transmog it. So you can see I can come in here. You can see once I select that transmog for the higher rank, I can actually then come back in here and change the color to whatever I want. Now, a quick note is you should always have food on you, because food affects really two different things: your health bar and your stamina bar primarily. That means when you're running and you're fighting monsters all the time, eventually due to damage and other things, your health bar is going to go down, meaning your max health bar and max stamina bar is actually going to shrink. The only way to actually solve that problem is to eat either rations or well done steak or some sort of meal that you made. That's the only way to replenish that so you can get back up to max. Now, the two main ways to do that are obviously when you go into town, you can use your tent, and here you can actually grill a meal. Early in the game, it's best to just grill a recommended meal, and this will just basically use whatever materials you have. You can add ingredients and cook with those, or you can cook only with rations. You can see the benefits we get here, and it lasts for 30 minutes. You'll need to do that pretty consistently so you can maintain your max health and max stamina. I'd recommend making a bunch of meals like that, so that way you can just eat when you're out in the field and replenish that stuff easy. The other good way is going to be to bring up your wheel. Simply rotate over and go to your barbecue portable grill. Here you can actually throw this right down on the ground if you have any raw meat or something like that, or any rations, and you want to grill a meal, you can do it right here. You can grill meat or make something with rations, again, right on the spot, no matter where you are. Now, one other thing alongside cooking is you'll need healing potions. Now, you should get plenty throughout just playing the game, but one thing is to always keep your eye out for honey, because as you automatically create more potions through this auto craft, you're going to want to also have mega potions. Mega potions ultimately heal you way more, as well as eventually the first aid med. So you want to make sure every time you see honey on the map via that honey icon, you're stacking up and collecting it every chance you get, because eventually you want to have so many potions that you never have to worry about running out, because trust me, you are going to need plenty of them down the road. Another thing to keep in mind here is your monster field guide. The only way you're going to be a true master monster hunter is actually understanding what kind of monsters you're fighting. And through fighting them and experimenting, essentially you get entries in your monster field guide that tell you actually a ton of useful information. For instance, if we look at Arkveld here, it has a description down at the bottom of kind of what he is. And then if you click R1, there's actually some helpful hints and actually show some of the things that are really unique for fighting this enemy, kind of what attacks they have, some helpful hints for those attacks, and also systems that show their tail is severable, their head is breakable, and also each monster has a chart here. Essentially, the more stars, the better, and obviously the X's are kind of bad. If we look, for instance, for the right wing, we have 3 stars for slashing and blunt damage, but with pods, we have 2 stars. And there's actually a pretty big difference in terms of the amount of damage that 2 stars does versus 3 star does. Arkveld takes 1 star all elements except for his chain blades. His chain blades are unaffected basically by all of them, because again, like this, the forelegs take a lot more damage, but also different parts take different elemental damage types. So that means you might want to swap over to a different kit and use a different elemental damage type. You might be dealing more damage. This is everything you need to know about just destroying monsters in this game and mastering them. The same goes for all the effective status effects and the effective items against these monsters, as well as the recommended elemental attacks. And even, believe it or not, the frequency that they're going to drop different materials and how often they drop. Now, naturally, throughout playing the game, you get huge food buffs through playing, and you want to take advantage of those because they're 60-minute food buffs and they're much higher level and better food buffs than typically eating. These are going to be normal cutscenes as you're going through different tribes in the story, and there's going to be a cutscene where you guys all sit down and eat and have a lovely meal together. You get huge buffs from this, so you want to make sure, especially playing through the story, where that you're taking full advantage of it, because those buffs are actually pretty insane. Now, one of the best things in the entire game, whether you've already used it or not, is the training area. The training area not only has a full area for you to just train every single one of your weapons and learn them and master them. You can literally spend 15 minutes in here and become a semi-god at your weapon. Additionally, there's a chest here in the training room that you can actually use for infinite ammo, so that way you can test out different things. Once you restock it, you can go to town using all the ammo types you want to practice using them without having to get all the materials and waste them. Additionally, you can talk to good old Luke. He's the training area manager, and you can set different training settings as well as different wound settings, strength settings, and all kinds of stuff. So you can come in here by all means and master your weapon. Now, on top of training, on the third tab in your start menu, you can access the play guide, and here you can actually look at your weapon controls. And this again is going to be your bread and butter for learning your weapon. Here, for instance, my longsword, it has all the different attack types and different combos here, as well as how they work. You can see it explains the full thing, the spirit gauge, how the spirit gauge works, and all of the different combos with the spirit gauge itself. So when you're learning a weapon, make sure to go into the training area, spend a decent amount of time in there, and you will be acing Monster Hunter pretty soon. Some other things to note about different weapons is every weapon essentially offers some sort of focus mode. It offers some sort of focus mode, meaning you essentially fill up a bar or something similar. I do want to touch on focus mode because it's really important in Monster Hunter. Essentially, focus attacks on enemy wounds do something different for basically every weapon. But again, like I mentioned in the settings portion, you want to make sure you have that on toggle, so that way you can just toggle and walk around with it. It's easier to aim and easier to fight enemies that way. If you're swinging naturally, if you look how far my character moves, he basically stands in one spot but kind of slowly moves up. If you're actually in focus mode, which you have it toggled on, and you're swinging, you actually move forward a little bit more, so you actually lunge towards the enemy in a way. So you want to make sure you're mastering how your focus specifically works for your weapon. Also, another huge thing is on the map, no matter where you are, some specific crafting things, like whether it's traps or whatever it is, ammo types are going to require a lot of specific materials. Now, throughout all the different locales, some of these materials are only located in individual spots in each one. But good news for you is there's actually a legend. It's not very intuitive, but it's at the bottom left if you hit left or right on the D-pad. And you can actually search by a fast travel list, so you can get taken right to that, so you don't have to look for it. And then you can actually filter by different environment and monster threat levels, but also by icons, meaning you can search for different enemy types. That also means that you can search for different things like stone, thorngrass pods, rock bursts. So you know exactly where to go. If you need nullberries, you know exactly where to go look, and you can just simply look on the map this way and search it versus having to look all over the map. And then you can just click X. You can set a waypoint or a highlight. When you do that, you'll be taken right there, and you can actually set your secret to go straight to that, so you don't even have to worry about it yourself. Also, you can hit triangle for display, and you can actually select different things. So we can just select gathering and just get all the gathering materials here and find out exactly where everything is at. It makes it so much easier to find the materials that you need. But keep in mind, in this case, you can also hit square to set your mini-map filter settings. And this will actually apply, so that way you'll see this stuff specifically on your mini-map. And whatever you do, make sure you know this right here for the end game in Monster Hunter Wilds, because it can literally change everything.